Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here today. The forecast this morning for Marco is markedly different than it was yesterday afternoon, and there's no doubt now, if that holds up, we're going to catch a big break in terms of that storm not being a hurricane. Also, much of it has sheared off and is no longer even part of the main storm. It's up in the panhandle of Florida. And so the impacts to Louisiana from Marco will not be as significant as was originally forecasted, and that is a good thing. However, there will be some storm surge along the southern part of the state, along the coast, as that storm tracks towards the west. But I guess if I've got a message for people, is not to assume that Laura is going to do us a similar favor. And the forecast for Laura remains very much like it was yesterday, and that is going to be a significant storm. And we were always told that as between Marco and Laura, the greatest threat was going to come from Laura, and that certainly appears to be the case now. But the good news is we're not going to have two hurricanes, and we're not going to have that short window of time, 12 to 18 hours, to try to do search and rescue and so forth ahead of Laura. And the other good news is we have more time now to focus on Laura before it has any major impacts on our state. And the focus is obviously also going to shift, at least because of the current track, more from southeast Louisiana and then over to southwest Louisiana, basically from Morgan City west. Not that there won't be impacts east of that, there will be, but they won't be as pronounced as we originally thought. But I do want to make it very clear, Laura is still forecasted to be a very strong Category 2. It is forecasted to make landfall Wednesday night in southwest Louisiana. And if anything, it'll come in a little stronger than that, according to what they currently believe. They're watching Laura very closely as she moves south of Cuba, and they want to see exactly what shape the storm is in when it enters into the Gulf. It's not good news that the center of the storm is over the water south of Cuba. We'd much rather it be over the land. That wouldn't be good for Cuba, perhaps, but it would destabilize the storm, and it wouldn't be quite as organized when it got back out over open water. But that's not the case. And so right now they don't see any similar weather conditions that would cause shear or disrupt that storm once it gets into the Gulf. We know that the water in the Gulf is very warm and will fuel the storm, and so they expect that Laura will strengthen significantly and in a relatively short period of time as it starts moving through the Gulf towards Louisiana. We again encourage everybody not to be fixated on the central track because 1/3 of the time the storm will actually make landfall outside of the cone, but the impacts of the hurricane will be felt outside of that cone regardless, with tropical storm winds spreading out further than the hurricane force winds. But if you look at the most recent graphic, we know that they're expecting hurricane force winds at least into central Louisiana. So today we will start our calls with the northern portion of the state in terms of their offices of emergency preparedness to make sure that they are paying attention and that we are responding to any requests for assistance that we get from them. GOSEP will obviously continue to operate 24 hours a day, around the clock. It has processed a number of requests from the parish OEPs, including sandbags, pumps, generators, personnel. Been working with CPRA and Chip Klein and his folks, talking to parish presidents throughout the night and the various levee authorities. CPRA is monitoring 689 gates along the river and across the coast. As of this morning, 396 of those gates are closed. I can tell you in St. Bernard, Cruz, and Delacroix are currently pumping down canals in areas outside the levee protection district. In Terrebonne Parish, the Bubba Dove floodgate is now closed in the Morganza to the Gulf levee protection system. In Plaquemines Parish, emergency dredge work was performed in order to successfully close the Empire Sector Gate, which is a critical component of the New Orleans to Venice hurricane risk reduction system. The National Guard has more than 2,000 National Guardsmen ready to provide support. They have staged 94 high-water vehicles across South Louisiana, also 55 boats, I think, and even dozen aircraft. They've also positioned 1,080 linear feet of super sack sandbags in Grand Isle and completed the delivery of generators and pumps to Grand Isle as well. The National Guard's also received 218,000 MREs and 372,000 bottles of water, and those are liter bottles, in Roseland, and then we'll be receiving more such commodities from FEMA at Camp Beauregard today. The Department of Corrections has successfully evacuated a little more than 1,300 parish inmates from Plaquemines, St. Mary, Terrebonne, and Vermilion parishes. Skipping a little bit to COVID, the testing sites are closed today. They will remain closed tomorrow so that people can be focused on the storm. Obviously, testing is critically important, and we hope to resume testing just as soon as possible. The Department of Health has updated me on its numbers that will come out shortly. But today we are reporting 622 new cases of COVID-19 across the state of Louisiana. That's on 8,643 tests. Unfortunately, we're also reporting 18 new deaths for a total of 4,623. Did receive a short while ago the weekly summary that comes from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, where they look at the data in the state of Louisiana and make recommendations. The data still has Louisiana red for cases at more than 100 cases per 100,000 population over the previous 7 days, but there is no doubt that our case growth is slowing, and so we are appreciative of the work the people of Louisiana are doing, but because we are still red, we know we have a lot of work left to do in that regard. With respect to the percent positivity, so the percentage of tests that we're administering that yield a positive result, that number is down to 8% across the state last week, which is an improvement, and so we appreciate that as well. But obviously still an awful lot of COVID left. I think we still had about the 15th or so highest case growth in the country, and about the same highest percent positivity as well. But we are doing better. Do not have hospitalization data for you yet. We will have that to you a little bit later today. But we do want to remind people that as you prepare for these storms, Marco and Laura, that there's still an awful lot of COVID out there. That should influence everything that you do in terms of preparing for the storms, making sure you have the hand sanitizer, the mask, the other things that you're going to need specifically related to COVID. And it also should inform the decisions you make should you need to shelter. Obviously, congregant shelters will remain a last resort for anyone who needs to evacuate. I will be back at 6 p.m. today for another update after our 4:30 UCG meeting, which will also be held just after the next update from the National Weather Service on the storms. So we will see you at that point. And at this time, we will take a few questions, and feel free to address any questions to the members of the team that you see assembled before you. Greg?
Governor, well, do you know yet, have they indicated where Laura might, more precisely, where it might threaten, and what kind of surge you expect from her?
Yeah, so the surge could be up to 10 feet in southwest Louisiana, and they really don't get too precise. They basically pick Morgan City, which is in the center of the state, and that's Morgan City West. It'll be less than that from Morgan City towards the east, but the storm appears on a track that will take it very close to Lake Charles. And as you know, especially if it's a Category 2 or a Category 3 storm, the area out to the east of the landfall typically takes the brunt of the rain and the wind and so forth, and that would be much of our coastal areas, again, Morgan City back to the west. But there is still plenty of time. With landfall not scheduled to happen now until Wednesday night, there's plenty of time for that track to adjust, whether it's east or west, we don't know. Everybody needs to be paying very careful attention to it, though. Yes, sir.
President Trump very quickly approved the federal declaration of resources to Louisiana. What would that provide from a bread-and-butter basis statewide?
Yeah. Well, the president did very quickly approve the request that we gave him for a federal declaration of emergency. We sent that request in on Saturday. It was approved on Sunday. He called me yesterday afternoon to make sure that I knew he was taking action on that, and we are very appreciative of it. It provides Category B, emergency protective measures, but we also, as part of that, with the arrangement we have with FEMA, working with Administrator Gaynor, but also with Administrator Tony Robinson in Region 6, the non-congregate sheltering is part of that as well, which is critically important. But what it allows to do is the federal government, and so whether it's the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, FEMA, to offer maximum assistance to Louisiana pre-landfall to save lives and property. It's part of that partnership that we have with them, and it's very, very helpful. There's no doubt that our receipt of 2 APACs, I was talking about the MREs in the water, very helpful to have those things in the state. And they're giving us maximum flexibility on that, because even though they've been delivered to the state, we haven't yet crossed the threshold where we have to pay for them, because they're going to stay together. And if at the end of the day we don't need them, we can send those items back to FEMA without having to pay for them. But just having them here in the state, and again, both at Beauregard and in Roseland, very, very helpful. So those are the things that were approved by the federal government. And as you know, that involves a cost share now that's favorable to us, so that rather than 100% of the cost of this preparation and response being on the state, it'll be 75% federal, 25% state. General Wascom, anything else we need to mention there?
Yeah, I just want to make clear the emergency protective measures that the governor mentioned. It was limited to mass care and evacuation, and the sheltering piece that the governor mentioned. So the full Category B we didn't get, which seems to be the new norm with Cristobal and now with these 2 storms. But with that, and so that's good. The other thing, this was an emergency declaration pre-landfall. Obviously, if Laura hits and it creates a lot of damage, then we'll get out with our preliminary damage assessment teams after the storm clears, and we'll do the damage assessments. And if we reach the federal threshold for the Category C through G, and then including Category A, which is debris removal, and then we'll file with the governor's signature a request back to President Trump for a major declaration.
Sam.
Governor, give an update on unemployment when the new expanded benefits are going to get paid out, and is the storm going to delay that?
Well, we do not anticipate that the storm will delay that. I'm expecting those payments to be in the mail by the end of the week. I do not have an update from the Workforce Commission, but we know that we were working with the vendor to make the changes within the computer system that needed to be made so that we could expedite the delivery of these unemployment compensation payments. And this is the federal enhancement portion, $300 a week. And again, that's retroactive back to August the 1st, because as you know, the previous round of benefits expired on July the 31st, so we're going to be retroactive to that date, and those checks will go out this week. If I will try to get an update for you and let you know precisely if it's going to, what day this week it's going to happen. But as of right now, we expect that to happen this week. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything in the sheltering situation? Like, are y'all opening any state-run shelters?
We are not opening any state-run shelters. Now, we are prepared to do that if we need to. I will tell you, congregate sheltering in COVID really is a last resort. That's not to say that we haven't game planned this and pre-positioned PPE and hand sanitizers and those sorts of things. We've adjusted the sheltering plan so that we would basically cohort family units and try to achieve as much separation as possible. I think yesterday it was mentioned to you all that we have some tents that we can use, and when we say that, we're not going to be putting people outside in tents, but inside the shelter facility, much like if you went to the Memorial Convention Center and you saw how those tents were arranged in there. We can do that, but still, even when you take the maximum precautions, it's not a safe situation, so you wouldn't want to do it unless it's absolutely necessary. And so we are working with parishes on their sheltering plans. We're encouraging individuals that are able to do so and need to evacuate to go and take shelter in a motel or a hotel. We know that for those parishes who are ordering evacuations, they are having shelters available for individuals who might need them. And then we are also working with parishes, as we mentioned, on the non-congregant sheltering so that they can offer hotels and motel space going forward as well. But I will tell you, it's one of the big benefits of the improved forecast related to Marco is we have more time to put this into play, and we can also refine the areas we think now that might really need to have evacuation orders in place, and it's significantly smaller portion of the state, which is a good thing, especially in this COVID environment. Yes, sir.
Governor, you mentioned that with Marco changing course, we may have caught a little bit of a break here, but Laura may not be so lucky. So what should Louisianans be doing right now with this little bit of reprieve that we may have?
Well, look, I think it goes without saying that if you just forget Marco for a moment and look at the weather forecast and the track for Laura, we've got a strong Category 2 storm that will make landfall Wednesday night in southwest Louisiana. And right now, if the strength changes, they think it's more likely to change and become more powerful, not less powerful. So that is a very significant storm, and Marco makes no difference with respect to that. And what we don't want people to believe is that because the forecast changed for Marco and because it weakened and so forth and became very small, that's an indication of what's going to happen to Laura. Because as we speak, there is nothing between Cuba and Lake Charles that would inhibit the formation of that storm and its continued organization and strengthening. And so if you look at that, if you consider the possibility of 10 feet of storm surge, if you know that the wind field could extend out 120 miles or so. I mean, we literally could have tropical storm force winds from Baton Rouge to Houston, and in a smaller area, you would have hurricane force winds. And then, of course, if that storm shifts a little bit to the east, you could be visiting hurricane force winds right here on Baton Rouge. And it only takes about a 30 to 40 mile shift for that to happen. So we need to all be paying attention to this. We need to be serious about it. We need to be prepared. Make sure that you and your family are safe, that you've got your supplies, you've got your kit, and you've got a little more time now. Quite frankly, we didn't expect that today would be a day, and maybe even the first part of tomorrow, where people could continue to prepare. We thought we would all be buttoned up, that we would be dealing with Marco for a considerable period of time, and then have that short window to try to do some power restoration, do some search and rescue if necessary, deliver some supplies and those sorts of things, and have to button up again for Laura. So we all have more time. It would be a shame if we didn't take advantage of it so that we can properly position ourselves to be prepared for Hurricane Laura. Yes, sir.
Yes, Governor. I can't help but think it's been 15 years to the week that Hurricane Katrina hit. Given the statewide psyche of that in itself, where does this come?
Yeah, and so on the one extreme, you go back in your memory bank 15 years, and you remember Hurricane Katrina followed quickly by Rita, and it was just as bad as it could possibly be. The last 3 or 4 hurricanes that have been forecasted for Louisiana, we've actually gotten a tremendous break. And so the fear is not what people associate with Katrina, it's what they associate with the last 3 or 4, to include Marco, and that might cause them to let their guard down ahead of Laura. So every storm is unique. I can tell you we're only going to dodge the bullet so many times, and the current forecast for Laura has it focused intently on Louisiana. And the last couple of adjustments that they made, whether it was yesterday afternoon or very early this morning, only changed the forecasted track very, very slightly, and the strength not at all. So that's really the big message here is understand that what we know right now, the strength of this hurricane is going to be akin to Rita, not to Marco or any of the other storms. And that's why we need to continue to prepare and continue to pray. And quite frankly, the meteorologists did not see yesterday afternoon what was going to happen to Marco with it shearing off and becoming smaller and less intense. So I'm happy to attribute that to the prayers of the people of Louisiana. Well, we can continue to do that as it relates to Laura, and certainly pray for one another that we're all going to be positioned well, and that the storm will have minimal impacts on our state and on its people. So we will be back with you later this afternoon with an update, and I want to continue to thank you all for covering these important events, both the weather events and COVID, and it's not one or the other. They are both present right now, and we need to be mindful of both, and we need to stay safe and stay well. That involves, seriously, wearing this mask. So thank all of you, and we will see you this afternoon.
Governor?
Yes.
I feel like Colonel Reed is doing his part.
No comment.